What is one thing in common between Metallica, Slayer, Rammstein, Children of Bodom, Queensryche, Testament, and even briefly Megadeth? ESP guitar was a weapon of choice. Let's talk about mine.
Hey guys, this is Gus G and you're watching Guitar Gear Guy. Thank you for tuning in.
Hello everyone, how are you? This is yours truly, Triple G, coming at you once again. If you are one of 5 regular viewers of this channel, thank you and welcome back. If you are new to this channel, welcome. I thank you for your time. Won't you stick around and let's talk about guitar of mine. As always, this episode is brought to you by and sponsored by absolutely no one. I'm bringing you every video of mine, everything that I show you on this channel is something that I paid for with my own money, from a perspective of a guy that really needs to practice more than buy more guitars, and just a next door neighbor, guy down the road, a chump, big time poser at best, absolutely zero rock star quality whatsoever. So when I tell you something, it just really comes from my own personal experience and perspective of just a normal guy, not a rock star or a someone that is just a corporate shield that's just putting out content so that free gear could constantly keep coming. So that's not me. That's not something that I do on this channel. So if you are someone that appreciates that kind of content, why don't you hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, leave a comment for me down below with anything you want to know from my collection. Be more than happy to engage. So later on in this video, I actually want to briefly talk to you about the ESP E-II versus the ESP's import line of guitars, the LTD brand. So we'll get to that part a little bit later. But before we get to all that, let's talk about the spec of what makes up this guitar. So the body is alder body with the finish that you see right here, which is called the Desert Camo. 3-piece maple neck, that is what is said on the spec sheet. I cannot tell because got the finish on the back. And topped with beautiful, shiny, glossy ebony fretboard. And we have a tasty binding on the neck and the headstock. We got Goto locking tuners on the back. And then Floyd original floating trim. And this may rub some people wrong, but we have EMG 81 and EMG 81 on the neck position as well. You have 1 single volume and 3-way toggle. We have 25.5-inch scale length, 24 extra jumbo frets, and to round it all out, we have Schaller locking strap lock. And believe it or not, one of the most important things about this guitar in terms of a spec wise, well, it's more design than spec, but it has the correct headstock. Let me do it that way. And when I say correct headstock, I'm not a huge fan of a reverse headstock. I understand that this model M-II neck through is normally associated with the reverse headstock, but I'm a big fan of a normal headstock. So I'm sure you're actually more familiar with the urban camo finish that's put out by ESP. And if not mistaken, I believe Jeff Hanneman of Slayer might have been the first one who had the ESP with the urban camo. Now correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not actually sure on that. But I actually do prefer the urban camo. However, I got the desert camo because it's somewhat more rare, as well as the urban camo version they put out has the aforementioned the reverse headstock, where I prefer the regular headstock. And as we've talked about earlier, the pickup combination here on this guitar is an EMG 81, both a neck and bridge. And there will be some of you, and at times me included, that may scoff at EMG pickups for a little bit less organic. They're more little sterile in terms of tone. However, there are applications where EMG pickups will really do you well. And you know, if Metallica and all these other mega metal bands that have done so well with the EMG pickups, who am I to sit here and argue that they're not suitable? So I won't. So this guitar, let me tell you, it is a straight up rock and metal machine. It feels good when you hold it, and it's very inviting in terms of you know, the ESP thin U neck profile with the, you know, there's no gloss finish on the back of the neck or anything like that. So it is very, very comfortable to play with the, you know, features like the belly cut right here. And in terms of a fit and finish, it's exactly what you would expect out of a Japanese built ESP guitar would be, that you would expect. It's impeccable through and throughout. Overall, there is really nothing to complain about in terms of the component selection or entire build quality. And the fret, oh, just beautifully done, gorgeous, and it really complements the shiny glossy ebony board. Also complements the look as well of a guitar that is built this well. So earlier in the video, I said something about the LTD discussion to be had in this video. So I want to touch on that a little bit. So the E-II is their ESP's a standard line of guitars that come out of their Japanese factory, which is highly coveted. LTD is the brand that they use for their import line of guitars. So that would like import from Korea, Indonesia. I think they also have some Chinese as well right now. So LTD is the import brand, and regular viewers of mine, you would know that I have dozens of LTD guitars. And for the lack of for the argument's sake in this video, I'll refer to two of my LTDs, one of them being my KH602, which is the Kirk Hammett 600 series, the M-II style guitar, as well as my Kirk Hammett Ouija guitar, the limited edition run that they did a couple years back. So those are Korean made LTD brand and guitars. So comparing those to this Japanese made ESP E-II line of guitars, this is something that I want to share with you, especially for those of you who are budget conscious and or beginners or bargain hunters. Once you get above LTD line of guitars, that's a 600 series and above. So in other words, ESP puts out LTD 200 series, LTD 600 series, LTD 1000 series. They used to do 400, 300, as well as 500 series, but I don't know if they still do that. But once you get up to about 500 or 600 series and above, then even though they may not be made in Japanese factory of ESP, I'm noticing, and hopefully I have a little bit of credibility. I mean, I own 70, 80 guitars. I've owned dozens of LTD guitars and E-II line of guitars, ESP guitars. Based on my ownership of these guitars and just the handling of them, really the LTD line of guitars are super well made. Now, it is possible the level, perhaps every 10 guitars they make, maybe 2 fail from quality assurance and quality control out of LTD, whereas maybe 0 fail out of E-II line out of Japanese guitars. I don't know that. Maybe there's a little bit more chance of quality check failure. However, once you get LTD guitar that has passed through the QA QC process and you got a nicely built one in your hands, I'm really not sure if you're missing out on ESP experience given how well they're made, and normally components aren't super, compromised normally. So with that said, hopefully if you have been teetering on, do I spring for E-II? Do I spring for like LTD 1000? I think you will do just fine getting something LTD 1000, LTD 600 series of guitars. So that would just mean that I would give really high remarks to well-made LTD line of guitars. And in terms of this E-II, I've always, this is the one that I opt to a lot. As far as this guitar, what more can I say? I mean, the camo finish is super cool. Urban camo would have been nicer. But couple things that I would share with you before I sign off in this particular Gear Chat episode. And if you hung around this far into this, I really appreciate your time. So one of the things that I mentioned in my previous video, which I'll link right here, where I talked about Jackson's Jeff Loomis Kelly, which is hanging right here, which is probably out of camera angle. I mentioned something about, as I was talking to the backside of that camera, I mentioned how they routed the cavity covers so that the plastic cover will sit flush with the body. And I mentioned at that time, hey, next video I'm going to talk about a Japanese made guitar, which that Kelly is made in Korea. The Japanese guitar that doesn't have it like that. So this is the one I mentioned at that time. So they've done a real good job with this 9-volt battery cover. And this control cavity cover is, they routed the routed the innards so the cover will sit flush to the body. What they didn't do is the trim cavity here, so the plastic cover sits directly on top of it. I don't know if that's going to show on the camera. If it doesn't, I'm sorry. Basically, it sits outside. So, it's not like the old days where body is being routed by hand. I mean, this is all CNC'd. So I don't understand why the routing machine can't be programmed where they would route out the inside so the cavity can sit flush with the body. Maybe it's got something to do with the trim components is sticking out, but that can't be true because Kelly has a trim as well, and that thing is flushed. So one of the minor gripes that I would have. One of the other things positive that I noticed, this is the first Floyd equipped guitar, and trust me, I've had 60 guitars, if not more, that had Floyd Rose variant of sort. The fine tuners on this Floyd Rose is the very first time that I've used, which actually worked well and which actually also turned without much of a resistance, really not stiff, and it's actually working as intended, working well out of the box without having to do any work to it. So that was really nice, and everything else is just quality, you guys, just nothing to fault for. And so be it that you have really hatred towards the EMG, you could easily swap the pickups out. Personally, I also love 57 and 66 variant instead of the 81 variety, 85 and 89 and 60, the normal EMG ones that we've all come to know. But 57 and 66, which you could just get the pickups and you can just quickly put in here because it's a quick connect system without soldering, may do you well if you're not a fan of 81s, but I probably will leave this one as is just to stay true to the stock configuration without modifying. Since I'm not planning to sell it, it really doesn't matter what I do to it, but I'll probably keep the pickups for the time being as is. Okay, so that wraps up this episode, you guys. I really appreciate your time sticking around watching this episode. Hopefully, I'll be back in a few weeks or so with another episode with something very special. So, I've been Triple G. You've been awesome. Until next time, you guys take care and be good humans. Triple G out.